What's going on, guys? Kalipas Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Cricket Dream 5G and going over everything you need to know about this phone to help you decide if it's the right one for you. Now, before we go any further, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot. But with that being said, let's get into the video. So this phone has a 6.82-inch LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 263, and an aspect ratio of 20.5 by 9. We got a water drop notch up here for the front-facing camera, and this camera is 13 megapixels. Overall, while not being super premium, I do think the phone itself looks pretty nice, and even though the display is only 720p, it does look pretty decent. I really think the size makes up for the pretty average resolution. Being 6.82 inches, you're definitely getting a larger display. So if you're doing some kind of content consumption like streaming videos or viewing photos or even playing a game, it's gonna look a lot nicer on this display just because everything's gonna show up a lot larger. And even though the phone is pretty large, it is pretty thin as well. So it's not going to feel too bulky in your pocket. The bezels are also decently thin too, so that really helps things. Now this phone has 64 gigabytes of internal storage with micro SD card expansion, so while you can do better if you really want to have the most storage possible, it's not bad either. I've seen phones in this price range with as little as 32 gigabytes, so it's not too bad. It's really right in the middle, where if storage is your number one concern, you can definitely do better. But at the same time, if it's not, if you just want a decent amount of storage and nothing else, it's still gonna be fine. If you're a power user, you might wanna consider finding a device with 128 gigabytes, because even in this price range, they do exist. There's a good handful of them out there. But if you're not a power user, if you're just using the phone for daily normal activities, 64 gigabytes should be fine, especially with the option to use a micro SD card. Now, one really cool thing about this phone that's not too common in phones that aren't flagship phones is that it has wireless charging. Now, I'm not sure the wattage, I couldn't find that information, but I will say it does charge decently fast on a wireless charger, and very few phones that aren't flagship phones have this feature. I really feel like it should be a more common feature. It's not that crazy or anything. I don't know why they don't have it in every phone, but unfortunately, that's just how it is. So it's really nice to see that such an entry-level phone like this actually has wireless charging. In addition to wireless charging, we do have a fingerprint scanner on the back, but unfortunately there's no face unlock. So if you do like to use face unlock, or if you like to have both options, you're probably going to be disappointed with this phone because it doesn't have the face unlock. It's kind of weird to me to see this too, because I've seen plenty of phones in this price range that do have both a fingerprint scanner and face unlock. But that being said, let's give this fingerprint scanner a try and see how well it works. That was pretty good. One more time. This default Cricket background always cracks me up. There we go. So as you can see, this fingerprint scanner is real fast and responsive. No issues here. So even though we don't have face unlock, the fingerprint scanner does work really well. So you'll still have that option to use instead of putting in a PIN or a password. Now, taking a look at the rear camera setup of this phone, we got a quad camera setup with a 48 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera for portrait mode, so not bad at all. This phone has pretty much every camera feature that you could ask for in a non-flagship phone. Now for video, the phone can shoot 1080p videos in both the rear and front cameras, so unfortunately no 4K, but this is a very entry-level phone, so that's really not a surprise at all. Now to give you an idea of what this camera can do, this is a photo taken by the main camera, and as you can see, it looks really nice. The lighting isn't the brightest, but it was a really cloudy day, so what can you really expect? The colors do look pretty decent. They could be a little bit more vibrant. I've definitely seen better than this. But at the same time, for an entry-level phone like this, it's really not bad at all. I am impressed. This is a photo taken with portrait mode. Now again, with the whole factor of this being just an entry-level phone, this is really impressive because portrait mode tends to not really look good on phones of this level, but this photo does look really good and professional. As you can see right here, there's a little bit of distortion. Part of the background doesn't really seem like it's blurred properly, but other than that, it does look like a nice picture. And again, the lighting wasn't optimal when this photo was taken, so that really just goes to show that in normal normal conditions, if you're taking photos of yourself or something like that for social media or maybe even a more professional situation, then this camera should do fine in portrait mode. Now this photo was taken with the ultra wide camera. It's definitely a good quality, especially for a phone in this price range. It's decently wide. I have seen wider, but at the same time, there's no distortion around the edges, and it looks just as good as the main camera's photo, so I really have no complaints. Now this photo was taken with the macro camera. I'm personally not a big user of the macro camera in general, but at the same time, I can appreciate the details in this photo. It's not the best I've seen, but it is definitely usable. So as you can see there, the photos taken by this phone are actually really quite good. So if you're looking for an entry-level phone that takes really high quality photos and has a lot of features, then this phone is definitely a good option, because despite being on the more inexpensive side, not only does this phone have a lot of extra features that phones in its price range either don't have or don't have very good versions of, but it just takes really good pictures in general, so that is going to make it a real solid choice. Now internally, this phone is getting 4 GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on the phone, and it came back with a single core score of 545 and a multi-core score of 1666, so this is really impressive. You're going to be hard pressed to find a phone in this price range that has this kind of processing power, unless of course it's something like a used flagship phone, then that's a completely different story. But as far as brand new phones go, this phone is definitely going to be at the top of its price range. This is really comparable to phones that are at least $100 more expensive than it, like the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G for example. This is really up there with all the mid-range 5G phones, even though this phone itself is more of an entry-level phone as far as price range goes. There's not going to be a whole lot that you just straight up can't do with this phone. You're going to be able to do all kinds of gaming, even the high performance gaming like playing Fortnite or something. As long as you have it on a lower graphics mode, it should run perfectly fine on this phone. And if you're doing video editing or something like that, as long as the files aren't too big and you don't push the processor too hard, it should be completely fine. And then of course for normal everyday activities like browsing the web, going on social media and that sort of thing, the phone is going to be on the faster side, and absolutely faster than pretty much any other brand new phone you'll find in this price range. In addition to a fast processor, this phone also has a decently large battery at 4,700 milliamp hours, not quite 5,000 like I would prefer, but at the same time, it's not a small battery by any means. So if you are going to be using your phone heavily throughout the day, then this phone is going to be a good one for that, because it's not going to drain nearly as fast as phones with smaller batteries. In addition to this, having a large battery like this down the road is going to make a huge difference, because as batteries degrade, the larger ones don't die out nearly as quickly as the smaller ones. So if you like to get one phone and keep it for a long period of time without having to replace it, this phone is going to be a great option for that. Another cool thing about this phone is that it has NFC. In case you don't know what it is, NFC is the technology behind contactless mobile payment services, like Google Pay for example. So if you do like those services, if you want to use them, then this phone is a great option because it actually has NFC, whereas most phones in this price range aren't going to have it, so you won't be able to use those features. So now that we've gone over some of the specs of the phone, let's take a closer look at the device itself. On the left side, we got the slot for the SIM card and the micro SD card, and nothing else. No assistant button, just the way I like it. On the bottom here, we got the microphone, a USB-C port, and the speaker. On the right side of the phone, we got the power key and the volume keys. On the top of the phone, we got the noise canceling microphone and a 3.5mm headphone jack. On the back of the phone, we got the fingerprint scanner, the camera setup with the flash, and of course a Cricket logo right here on the bottom. The phone itself has a really simple, more minimalistic design that I definitely really like. I'm not a huge fan of this bottom bezel or the water drop notch front facing camera, but aside from that, I do think it looks really nice. It doesn't look premium at all by any means. You can tell just by looking at it that it's not an expensive phone or anything like that. But at the same time, I gotta say the weight to it is pretty impressive. Despite not being any kind of premium, it doesn't feel like a cheap phone at all, and it definitely feels really solid. So in conclusion, my final thoughts about the Cricket Dream 5G. This is a really nice phone, and it has a lot of really impressive features for its price range. In fact, this is probably one of the most powerful entry-level phones I've seen as far as processing power goes, and the fact that you can get a 5G phone for this price is really impressive. I'm not a huge fan of the storage just because with all the nice features of this phone, I feel like it's set up to appeal more to power users, and power users are probably going to want more than 64 gigabytes of internal storage. So I could definitely see that being a problem. It would have been nice if the phone had a 5000 milliamp hour battery. It's not really that much of a difference, but if you're gonna give it a 4750 milliamp hour battery, why not just go all the way, make it 5000 and give it some compatibility with fast charging? Because again, going back to the target market, I feel like people who are going to be looking for a larger battery and really get a lot of value out of that would also get a lot of value out of fast charging. And since this phone has wireless charging, which is a unique feature anyway, giving the phone some fast charging would be really nice too. But other than that, I do think this phone is a great phone if you're looking for a fast 5G phone with a huge display and a great camera setup, all for an entry-level price. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And as always, I will see you in the next video.